Good afternoon, everyone. You are here with the B&H Virtual Event Space. We are on the eve of Save Your Photos Month, that being this coming September. In an effort to help you protect your memories and preserve your legacy, the photo managers have put together a program available at thephotomanagers.com/save-your-photos-month. To make it a little easier, we will pop that link into the chat. The B&H Virtual Event Space is joining in that effort, as we will be hosting the photo managers for 3 more Tuesdays this coming September. Today, we're being joined by Kathy Nelson, Kathy Stone, and Kristen Goodman to talk about protecting your photos before an extreme weather event. Hi, guys. How y'all doing?
Great.
Good. Well, so it's a very interesting timing that we have this, especially with Kristen. We're hoping that she stays safe and that everyone around her and her community is safe as well. Why don't you take it away, guys?
All right. Well, thank you so much. For those of you who don't know, my name is Kathy Nelson. I'm the CEO and founder of the Photo Managers, and we are thrilled to be bringing this next series of events. But the timing of this one couldn't be more interesting. It's protecting your photos before or during an extreme weather event. And first, Kathy Stone will go in a moment, Kristen, but Kristen happens to be down in Naples, Florida. So fortunately, I think they're getting just heavy rain and the hurricane is passing before them, but she certainly has a lot of experience in dealing with what happened last year with Hurricane Irma. So we started Save Your Photos Month 9 years ago because of the Joplin tornadoes, the Hurricane Sandy, who came up the East Coast, and then a significant amount of flooding that happened in Calgary. And as photo managers, people who help people get their photo lives in order, we had a conference and we gathered together and we thought, oh my gosh, like what can we do to help people before a disaster strikes? And so that's what we're here to talk to you about today. And I'm going to introduce you first to Kathy Stone. She has become like the guru of the photo managers of helping people, both professionals help their clients when they have water damage, and also just the general public of what to do when their photos they've experienced flooding for all different reasons, because she spent a significant amount of her time and effort helping people rescue their photos from the floods that occurred in Calgary at that time and since then. So I'm going to turn this over to Kathy Stone, and she's going to share her screen and give you some advice about what to do.
Okay, you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen, and I see your face mask on your
my face mask. So yeah, thanks so much, Kathy, and thanks to B&H Photo for having us. And again, so timely. A little bit about me in the picture with the face mask on. That was one of my many times trying to save people's photos, and that's become, I was part of that first meeting back in 2012 or after those tornadoes in Joplin and the flooding we experienced in Calgary and other areas in southern Alberta, because it was so tragic. And we were just sort of like, what can we do about it? And it seems now that I was launching my business actually right when the flooding hit southern Alberta. And so I had to set aside my client work and marketing and everything and help try and rescue people's photos. And I think part of what we decided was it's way easier for us to help you get your photos in order before we have to try and save them from a disaster. And I know Kristen's been in the trenches too, and just knows that we'd much rather help you and all photo managers with your collections before they're damaged. So we're going to give you some tips for that. I'm going to talk a little bit about that experience and also give you some tips about what happens if your photos are damaged, because in reality, sometimes that happens and there's nothing we can do about it. So again, it seems like since then, there's been more and more disasters on a more frequent basis. And I don't know if that's just more news coverage of it, but wildfires, hurricanes, floods, landslides, all sorts of things. We're experiencing bad wildfires right now in just west of me in British Columbia and Northwest Territories. I think at the moment, I saw a stat, we have over 100,000 people currently evacuated from their homes in various locations. There's an entire city of 90,000 Yellowknife in the Northwest Territories who have been evacuated for more than a week. So this now seems to be reality, and we want to make sure that we can provide you with the information that you need to help make sure that we don't lose it. When we say photos, we don't mean just your photos. We also mean your memorabilia. And that's something we never think about. Is it's very hard after when you're trying to evacuate to grab those precious things that you inherited from your grandma or grandpa, or your baby shoes or things like that. So we're not just talking about pictures, and also all your media, all your VHS tapes, all those DVDs, all those home movies. It's a whole load of stuff that becomes very difficult. So one of the big questions for me when we're dealing with this, and what I've experienced lately, is, are you going to have time? When a disaster, Kristen's going to talk about disaster preparation in a bit, but one of the major considerations is, will you have time? Because we always think, you know what, we're going to have a ton of time. We'll be able to load up all those boxes of photos, and I've got a plan in my head that if my house ever catches on fire, I'll break the window of the study and pitch all the boxes of photos out. But is that real? Is that realistic? That and in those pictures there, the High River in the top left is High River, Alberta, after the floods. Those are the roofs of houses. So not only is your basement flooded, but your whole entire house is flooded, and everywhere to access it. Some of those people didn't get into those houses for 2 to 3 weeks after the flooding hit, until the water naturally drained away. The other picture there is people who are being evacuated in front end loaders in the back of dump trucks. You don't get to take your pictures with you. You don't have room in those circumstances to take stuff with you. So we want to, and a friend of mine who was evacuated during the fires in British Columbia, they had 25 minutes. And she said of that, they had to load up their clothes. They have 2 cats. They had to get the cats into crates, get the cats in the car. And she said it would have taken 10 minutes to load the photos in the car, and they just didn't have those 10 minutes. So she grabbed baby album for both her kids and her wedding album, and the rest just sat there. Thank heavens they've been back in, and their lake home wasn't damaged, but it could have been, the fire was pretty close. So we want to try and protect things before photos happen. And this is a quote from someone whose photos I helped with in High River. She said, when the house flooded, it's not losing the TV or the furniture that bothered them, it was the memories. They captured our memories in photos, and in our thoughts, we could conjure up moments that were special. Losing the physical picture was beyond traumatic for us. And I think that's something to keep in mind too, if you're helping others who are facing this is a very traumatic circumstance too. And that's, you just don't have the time to deal with that. It's not just natural disasters either that can damage photos. You've got house fire. I've dealt with a lot of people who had pipe leaks. Kathy mentioned the other day that in Texas, when they were hit with the severe cold weather, they had a lot of pipes burst, and then pipes freeze, and when they burst, then water can get everywhere. So there's less dramatic disasters that can damage your photos too. So the whole idea is prepare now so your photos don't get wet. I've got some tips for damaged photos if you do encounter them, and those are just some examples of different water and photos, fire and photos, anything in photos and memorabilia really don't mix well. Water does a lot of damage to pictures, as you can see in those photos. All of that, I think, was from High River. The middle picture was a basket that was found much later, probably months later, and that is basically just destroyed. It was sitting wet for a long time, so mold just eating away at everything. So my first tip is, don't throw anything away. This is one of the bags that was brought to me after High River, where the lady had been sitting on her porch, and someone who knew what I was doing had driven by, and she was sitting on her doorstep crying with this bag by her feet, getting ready to take it and throw it in the dumpster. It was full of, she was an older woman, it was full of all of her family albums she had made for her family, back to heritage albums. And luckily, the person that came along said, hey, let's just take this and see if somebody can help deal with it. So don't throw, as much as the temptation is because it's so traumatic, don't throw stuff away, because there might be help. This is a wonderful picture of Kathy again, but take safety precautions. That's one of my biggest things I want to stress, is that this stuff isn't clean. This is, maybe if it's a household pipe burst, you've got clean water, then you're probably, less trouble. Mold grows within 24 hours of something being wet. Mold loves photo emulsions. It's like a food for it. So wet photos, but gloves, mask, and N95, which everybody should have a stash of now. N95 mask is good too. Goggles, I wear glasses, so I didn't wear goggles because I couldn't see and it just got so warm. I'm wearing, with this case, this was a very old album that had been frozen for a long time. We'll talk about that in a second. So I'm actually wearing a Tyvek suit to protect my clothes. It just seemed easier than getting mold. And I was wearing the respirator because I discovered the first round of doing photos that mold and dirty photos weren't good for asthma either. So make sure you protect yourself. Well-ventilated area. I noticed, I'll give a little hint, in one of Kristen's pictures, I think she was working in her garage too, not in her office. You don't want to work in an area that you live in. You don't want to work in a library. Like, you want some place that's got good ventilation and that small children or pets aren't around in either. Separate wet and damp items. Don't let, as much as you can avoid, don't let photos dry in stacks, because then they become a brick of photos. If you can all possibly separate them and lay them out to dry, if you can take the paper envelopes off so the paper doesn't stick to the photos, makes it that much easier to get them cleaned later. Next tip, if you've got albums that got wet, photograph the covers and the pages before you take them apart, or just scan them. Use a phone scanning app and get a scan of what the album looked like. That particular page on the right, there was writing on it to identify who was in the photos. And often you'll find that with albums. So you don't want to lose that information if you can avoid it. Freeze if there's no time to dry. If you're on a tight time frame and you don't have any time to get the photos dry, put them in the freezer. Again, remove the envelopes if you can, remove the album covers, because they're going in the garbage anyway. They're not salvageable. And that saves a little bit of space in your freezer. I was lucky I happened to be able to empty out a whole freezer to put photos in when I was doing this, but the freezing stops mold from growing. And sometimes freezing will help you separate if you try and separate them when they're still frozen, it'll make it easier to separate them as well. So freeze them. Good idea to label the bags, because later on you think you might remember what's in them, but I labeled everything and I kept a piece of paper with what was in what. So freeze them if you don't have time to dry them. We had another question to answer, and that question was, what are our favorite products for dealing with photos? And my top one is Forever. It's a partner with the photo managers. Forever is like they do digitizing. They have safe online storage. A lot of people are afraid of cloud storage. There is good, safe, private cloud storage, and cloud storage plus other backups is probably one of the best ways to save your photos, because it's not going to get burnt in the fire or it's not going to get wet. So highly recommend that. Archival Methods is a company that produces all sorts of archival storage containers, sleeves, all sorts of things for your photos and other memorabilia. I use their products a lot. A couple other less important tip is clear. I like to use clear plastic bins because I can see what's inside them without opening them. And even if I label them, sometimes I go, oh, well, I'm not sure what's in there. But I love it if they're clear as opposed to something solid, because I can look in there and go, oh yeah, okay, that's pictures, that's memorabilia, that's something else. Another great device, which I love and use, I have a bunch of them, is a product from Creative Memories called a multi-purpose tool. And you can find them other places, but it's essentially a flat spatula, which is really good for slipping in between stuck photos to see if they're loosening at all. So finally, you got to enjoy your photos. That's the most important thing, is to be able to share our pictures and why we want to save them. We want to share them. We want to enjoy them. And I love my Nixplay digital frames to do that. So that was my my tips. Contact information, I think the link is in the chat. And so I think with that, I will let Kristen go and tell you about how to get ready now and prepare.
Ooh, that was a lot. Let me share my screen. We'll switch, hopefully.
I'm still amazed every time I see the picture of putting photos in the refreezer like that. And I think
Right.
just people have no concept of that as an option.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Yay. Okay, good. Well, I do want to thank Kathy Stone, because she was such great help with me last year in September here in South Florida, because it was the first time I had to learn how to do all this stuff with wet photos. So I'm excited to share with you what I did learn. And let me try to get my screen to switch. There we go. So this was last year, which is kind of windy, looking like that today, not as much water. So like I mentioned, I'm in South Florida, which Naples is about 2 hours south of Tampa, which is going to get hit today by Idalia, it sounds like. And I'm straight across from the Miami area. We had so much storm surge. I've been here for 35 years and you always get the warning, which is the best thing about hurricanes. If there is anything that's good, that we do get a little bit of a warning and preparation, but if you heed the warning, then you're okay, I think, usually. But some people just, oh, it's not going to come again. And, you know, we get a little complacent about that. But this was real. This was one of our main places called 10 City. That's a really good touristy place that lots of people go to. And it had just so much water. So I wasn't planning on becoming an expert. But with Kathy Stone's help, thank goodness, I think I did. And I really don't want to continue being that, but I will be for you if you need me. So these are a few things I saw after Hurricane Ian hit our area. So one of my friends lived on the water. And so that is a picture of her garage, and she lost everything. But the first thing, of course, she went to was she grabbed her photos and videos and asked me to come over and just kind of give her a look at what she had. What can we do? And I was just amazed at how people just had stuff all over the side of the road and just things everywhere. You just wanted to help everyone seeing that. I'm sure you felt the same, Kathy. I had another client that brought me in that wet videotape and several videotapes, which that one was her wedding tape that I was able to send to one of our partners, Photo Bridge in New Jersey, that Julian went through Hurricane Sandy, and she was actually able to save that tape. I mean, look how bad that looks. So just to have a partner that can help us with that, that's one of the great things about being a photo manager. And then here's some other pictures of things that I picked up after the fact. A friend's wedding album is there in the middle. And Kathy mentioned separating things with parchment paper. I went to the grocery store and bought so much parchment paper and Ziploc bags and anything that you could imagine. And we covered the table behind me here in the gallery. I work out of my husband's gallery. We laid plastic on the tables to dry out some photos. Like, it was a big deal here for a few days. So, but let's chat about how to prepare so your photos and memorabilia don't look like this. So just a few tips to prepare before it happens is the gather and inventory phase. So it's like, do you know where your things are? I know lots of people move here to South Florida to retire and different things. And what's happening here is you bring your framed photos, you bring all that stuff from up north that's in your bins, boxes, and really you can just get it all in one place. Like, if you just know where it's all at, that's one of the best things to know. But you also want to think about your computers, your hard drives, old backups, CDs, DVDs, anything with data. And then let your photo collection live where you live. So inside your house where it's temperature controlled. So what I found with several people here is lots of people have moved into condos on the beach where the storm surge came through. And we don't have basements here in South Florida like you lucky people do up north. And what would happen is people that have a storage unit where their cars are sometimes stored underneath the building, that's where they had things stored. So their photos would be in this storage area. My best thing is to get those things out of there, like keep them in your house, sort some of your things, condense, and just simplify it. You know, I think Kathy mentioned, you know, the envelopes. You don't need the envelopes. If the frames are outdated, take things out of frames, you know, and my main tip is keep what tells your story. So when I'm helping somebody organize their photo collection, that's one of the main things I like to say. Like, if you went on vacation and you have 20 pictures of the beach, you really don't need 20 pictures. So tell your story, less is more sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And then back up your photos on your computers and your phones often. So I like have a backup system like an iCloud. I like to use Carbonite. Backblaze is another automated system that I even back up my external hard drives that are plugged in. It's something I don't even think about. It just automatically happens. So look into one of those different brands. And so many people do have iCloud, but just make sure everything's turned on properly. And if you have an external backup, I have lots of external hard drives, which I have one here, looks like this. They're so much smaller now. They can fit in a waterproof and a fireproof safe. So for those of you, where the fires are and things like that, think about that. You definitely want to have a system backup. And then we also can say, share an external drive with someone out of state. Like, you don't have to do everything every day on your external drive, but maybe you did your genealogy and like your kids' photos, weddings, baby books, whatever. Do a backup of those special things that you just cannot do without and send them to a family member out of state somewhere. Just an extra place to have things stored. And then digitize photos, memorabilia, and videos. So that's a lot what the photo managers do. I do a lot of scanning for people. So, but if you're not able to digitize your photo collection now, just have them in a place where you can easily access them. I'm talking more for, I guess, my situation with hurricanes, but I know you mentioned fire, Kathy, and it's hard to think about that. Like what are you going to do with that? What are you going to grab first? So at least if in your mind you kind of know where your things are, like hopefully you'll have a minute or two to think about that and know what's important. And then put them in plastic bins for temporary storage. I wanted to say that clear is my favorite color too. And I do like the clear bins because you can see what's in them, and I love a label maker to label what's in there. And then remember too, what happened last year here is like some people put things high up, and when the storm surge came, things were floating. So you see cars on TV in that storm surge, or like when somebody has a flood in their basement, things start to float. You're like, oh my gosh, it doesn't really, it's not very much water that makes things float. So as high up as you can, or if you do have a second story, that's the best place to have your things, especially thinking about a hurricane. And then hurricane season is June 1st to November 1st. I usually say August and September are the hottest months, it seems like, but as you prepare your hurricane supplies or other things, photos, memorabilia, computer backup, that should be added to your evacuation list if you have to evacuate. In 2017, we had Hurricane Irma happened here, and we did evacuate our house. And I took what Kathy mentioned, I took our baby books, the wedding book, I had everything up high in clear bins. But then I thought, oh my gosh, can I fit some things in my car? So, so preparing ahead, what are you going to store them in? Again, we've mentioned clear bins, something labeled, a box, whatever you can do. But if you're evacuating, will that shelter let you take that in? Can you imagine loading all of your things up, all your bins that you have in your basement probably, and trying to take them into the shelter? That may not happen, so think about that. But I like to joke that, but if your things are digitized, all you need is that little hard drive. So if you're backed up and you have things, in place, digitized already, that's all you have to take. And a lot of this takes that, crazy, like, where am I going to get my stuff? Or how can I take it all with me? So that's just something to think about. And then again, we like to talk about our favorite products. So my number one thing is archival methods, and Kathy mentioned that. So the picture in the top there, that's photos that are actually organized. So we always say, everybody's brain is a little bit different. If I could do everything by year, month, and by the minute, that would be wonderful. But we sort by people, event, decade, different things. So that's how some of those boxes, you can sort your things that way. It's a wonderful place to get products from, lots of different things. Digital photo books. I do a lot of scanning, I mentioned, and I've scanned lots of my thick photo albums that I used to do, physical photo albums, and digitized them because it's a lot easier to bring those with me instead of bringing the big books. And then my photo scanner is there to digitize. And again, we can digitize memorabilia, kids' artwork, just anything, documents. My one friend that I showed her garage, her mother had did all of their genealogy and had binders of documents with everyone's information. So that was something that I had to help separate, and we were able to save a lot of that documentation for her. So, but digitizing that is a great thing to be able to save it. I love a good label maker and sticky notes. I have sticky notes laying here because they're my friend. And then I'm loving this new app called Projector. It's kind of like a Netflix experience. Projector is something that we've been introduced by Robert Marks at the Photo Managers. He's one of our people now with one of our vendors. And I'm a tester for that right now. It's in beta testing, but it's going to be a great thing. You can load it onto your smart TV. You can share it with your family and load all of your videos in there and watch it just like a Netflix. You can have all your weddings together, all of your births, all of your parties, whatever, by family member. It's really a cool thing. So I'm excited to be using that, and it's going to be something that I'm sure will be spreading around soon. So. And then this last picture, this is some of my supplies that I did use to help people last year. You see my parchment paper, my scissors, my Ziploc bags, my gloves. I mean, it was just a little bit crazy. So, but that's my contact information. And if you're on your computer, you can zap my little Popple QR code, and that takes you to my Instagram and Facebook and website, and you can follow me there. So, but I really appreciate the opportunity for sharing, and everyone be safe. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me, and I'd love to be able to help you if you needed me. So thanks so much.
All right. Hey guys, I am back from the ether. I just wanted to remind all the viewers watching right now, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll get them over to our crew live on the video. Jill from Vimeo was ahead of the game, and she asks, when pulling the photos out of the freezer, what is the best way to defrost them?
The best way is in little batches, like not a whole bunch at a time. And I just set them at room temperature and started with whatever was on top to see if it would, like you say, it's a stack of photos. I would just start to see, because sometimes even ones that are stuck together because they got dried in a stack, if they're frozen, there'll be enough little moisture to break that, the stickiness, and you can actually get them apart. I think it's important to note too that when we talk about saving photos, I know people have come to me with the idea that you're going to digitize these. You most likely aren't going to be able to save the actual item because it's potentially contaminated, and they're not in pristine shape, put it that way. But I do a bit batch at a time, like as many as I can work with, and I just let them sit on the table at room temperature to thaw them.
Just going off of what you just said, have you guys found yourself dealing with any of Adobe's fill AI tools now that, if there's a scan of an old picture with cracks on the sleeve and so forth and so on? What experience have you guys had with that?
Well, we just did some restoration for somebody that I had scanned some really old photos from the 50s that were just black and white, far away, little square pictures. And what was amazing is she wanted to, we own a print shop, so she wanted to print a canvas print of that. So I scanned it. My husband was able to do the AI on it and just brought their faces back and their eyes. And she was about in tears. It was her brothers and her mom and dad. And it's just amazing, just a little tweak of that. But then I also saw something crazy showing AI, where AI is not like super the way to do some things. A little girl's name was Olive, and somebody typed in Olive, and a bunch of olives came up on the page, right? And inserted into the photo. So I think AI is going to be really cool, but you just got to use it the right way.
Well, and back when I was back those many years ago, when I was doing the flooded photos, we did restoration work, probably in the very beginnings of AI, using like Photoshop to edit out spots and things, try and repair photos that were important ones. A lot of times frame photos, water gets between the picture and the glass, and there can then be bubbles on it that are unsightly, that turn up on the scan, that are like damage to the photo. So we did quite a bit of that. I actually somebody brought me about 5 years ago an album that they had seen the note to freeze, and it was a baby book from High River, and the lady had heard the thing to freeze it. Her daughter was going to throw it away. She put it in her freezer. She'd moved about 3 times, and I met her totally out of a context of the whole thing. And I did the whole thawing, cleaning, scanning, and we reconstructed her album using a lot of restoration software to restore. back in the High River time, back in 2013, I don't even think AI would have been a word only in the world of computer geeks, but we did have software to restore with. So it's going to be very helpful now to fix, it's very exciting, the potential to fix damage now.
Nice. Raven Esperanza, she was in our Zoom. She just asked, what do you do if photo prints were already smudged? I think that restoration process, the digitization and then the restoration process is how you would go about that one. She also had a question, can you use a regular freezer? Can we use a regular refrigerator even if there are remnants of raw meat and stuff? I mean,
you know what? I go on take the idea that whatever you got, you use. Like there's ideal stuff. And when we talk about professionals doing this, there's all a bunch of tools, but you use what you did. We were gathering wax paper from neighbors, but I emptied out a freezer on top of a extra fridge. So there was nothing else in it. But then that album lived in that freezer for a long time. So if it's clean, all the better. But if you're putting everything in plastic bags and sealing them to put them in the freezer, then I don't think it's going to be a big deal. Like the mold isn't going to get out when it's frozen. And I didn't put food with it, but if that's what you got and you got to save your baby album, that's what you're going to do but just make sure you seal the plastic.
And just like here, we were out of power. Like we didn't have power. So people were asking me like, oh my gosh, what do you mean the freezer? Like we don't have power. So I was lucky that, it was sporadic in spots. And I even had clients that cleaned their freezers out for me to help some of my clients here. So that was just awesome. I kind of just put it out on my social media. Does anyone have freezer space and power? So everybody's willing to help, so whatever they had to do.
One thing that you said earlier, Kathy, that it doesn't have to be a natural disaster to be a threat to your photos and your memorabilia. Now, don't get me wrong. I love my mother very much. She is the rock that supports our entire family. But whenever we moved from house to house, she turned into kind of a little natural disaster of her own. And so we would lose photos, we would find photos, we would lose photos. Eventually, luckily, we got to the point that we got a scanner and we could digitize everything. But I think I'd also like to point out to everyone watching, it does not have to be a hurricane, does not have to be a fire. It can be something as simple as going from point A to point B with all of your items. That was one thing that when you mentioned it, I was like, oh, my mom's like a fire now.
I went with one client, a pipe burst and she'd been sorting her photos on their pool table, and mom and dad were away and teenage son was home and got all panicked because thinking he had caused this to drip. So he thought the best thing to do was to stack them all back up and hide them somewhere. So it doesn't take a natural disaster, like just someone's best intentions. He thought it's best I got them out of the water so I could dry off the pool table, because that was important. But
another story on that too is when my parents, when they sold our house when we were younger, their marriage split up, and it was my mom wanted us to come down and go through the photos, and I was in my early 20s, and I said, I don't need any of that stuff, and I wasn't interested, and she threw it all away. So I have very little childhood memories. I would have done anything today to go back and say no, but so a lot of times people think the next generation doesn't want these photos. And so I always think, don't listen to what your 20-year-old might have to say about the photos, if they want them or not. If they had been digitized, then at least they would have been somewhere and I could be looking at them today instead of not having access to those. So, so that's kind of a disaster. That's not, a natural weather disaster, but just kind of a timing of life disaster.
And I think with us too, as photo managers, like we really help people when they have so many things and they've inherited the things from their parents. And a lot of times, there's so many things. And my whole thing about, save what tells your story. You don't have to save everything, but just enough to be able to pass on to generations and leave that legacy, because it's not always about all the stuff, it's really the good stuff that makes it the best part.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But speaking of stories, we touched upon the stack of photos and hide them, moving. What about the other end of it? What have you guys encountered any extreme situations that have become success stories where you were able to restore a lot of memories for people?
Oh, I feel like that from last year, just, that lady, the picture of the videotape from her wedding, like my heart broke. I would cry with these people. I mean, I felt so horrible for them. And just that little win, like, oh my gosh, she saved her tape, and I mean, she wouldn't have had that. And she just found her slides, or her negatives from her wedding. And I'm getting those done right now because she couldn't find them. So that made her go back then and find more things, because she's just like, I'm not going to let this happen again. And she's just so excited she was able to find those too. So I just think just helping people, and they just write us a little note. I mean, it's just the best, helping people save all this stuff.
Well, and I have the same experience with one of the ladies that I helped, the one that had the quote about her pictures. Is a lot of the pictures were pictures of her boys when they were born. They were like their baby pictures and stuff. And we became friends from that experience. And she does live in a small town. We did an event together for the town about a year later, where we gathered a whole bunch of crafting supplies and called it a healing crop for High River, where everybody could come and pick up all these, because they lost, anybody who did scrapbooking, who made albums, lost all their stuff. They lost all their wool. They lost anything they had for hobbies. That was just all gone. And so we've remained in contact and friends, and I've literally watched her kids grow up. So I've just watched her oldest son just graduated, and it's it's friends for life. And anybody, when you can save that, like her, when she picked up what was the photos, I always let the people throw their own things away, because that's something that was expressed to me, that what was hardest was when people went through your house and not knocking all the good volunteer work, but to have other people just be going in and like taking out absolutely everything. Because if your house has water in it for 3 weeks, you're not saving anything, like your clothes, nothing to, even you might be able to wash dishes off, but it was very hard emotionally for stuff just to be gone. And so I let them have the moment to share, to throw their own pictures away. And the lady that I made that I reconstructed the baby book for her, she was just absolutely thrilled, because it was very important for her. And she's in her 80s now, and it was so important for her to see it. And we printed it again as a digital book. We rebuilt the whole book, and her daughter was thrilled too, because she did not know mom had even kept it. She thought it was long gone. So to get a book that went from her birth to when she was married, including her career and everything else, was pretty awesome too. So it's very rewarding work, I think.
And I think our clients become, I hate calling our clients, they become our friends and our family, so doing all that extra stuff, you learn so much personal things and great stories just from their photos. And, you're really helping them, and they're helping us. It's a good heart job for sure.
Nice. I was wondering, do you find yourself connected to any other services, like, when if a disaster runs through a town, and there are other the home building services or other maintenance people, do you find yourself connected, finding work, quote unquote, to that way, through those channels, instead of the families contacting you directly?
Definitely. I have most of my work is referral work from somebody else. And I work with a lot of home organizers too, and, and different people, but it just seems like, people think of us, first, because a lot of people know we do this, which is great.
Well, and I'm experienced more and more, not personally, as back then, the people back in that time were lucky if their insurance covered their house, let alone their photos or any other thing that was in it. But I've found now that there's more people bringing, like, you can't insure your photos for more than what the paper's worth that they were printed on. Like, no one can insure that. But I'm finding more and more people are one of our colleagues was recently hired because by the insurance company. She did an estimate for the insurance company because the restoration work part was covered. So I think more and more, and I've been doing a little bit of research for a project related to this, and there are now home restoration companies. In fact, one of our members who helped me a lot with the flooding in Calgary is now actually working for a restoration company that goes in. And so she is referring people with photos because it's sort of a specialty niche. So I think it's a great marketing thing. I'm kind of on the, how could I say, the twilight of my photo organizing career. I'm moving towards trying to retire so I can look after, I had a really bad photo organizer, me working on my family photos. So that's kind of the direction I'm going, but I love to, I'll never lose the desire to help people with damaged photos. So that's something that's a fun job when I finish work and can retire. But I think that's now a bigger connection because I think finally, and I don't know if it's a good thing, Kristen, or a bad thing, because this damage is becoming so more prevalent. Like, I don't know, it just seems like there seems so much more. Like, I don't really remember a hurricane in California ever, or
Tornadoes. We just had tornadoes in Connecticut. I mean, we don't get tornadoes in
Oh
Connecticut.
yeah, exactly. Or that whole string of hurricanes that's, I know it's hurricane season, but I don't remember there being like a whole string all lined up. So I think that's more and more likely that the connection will be there to work with home restoration.
I just wish, because since you're in Canada and and we're in the States, it's like I just wish they would cover, insurance would cover. Like, insurance is so crazy, and especially since we've had so many hurricanes here, and it just breaks your heart when you really want to try to help somebody, and I try to do the best that I can, but it still costs money and time, and and it's just like, I just wish that was something that insurance would consider. It's not really contents. I went through that with my friend that lost her house and everything. And, I said, I didn't bill her. I sent her, gave her a bill. And I said, if your insurance covers it, great. You're my first test person. So, yeah. And hers was a lot, and her friends helped too. I trained them a little bit, but I just wish insurance would cover some of that. It's just crazy.
So, the processes you guys were talking about during the slideshows, they are time consuming, obviously. And we were talking, the point of this presentation was getting ahead of the extreme weather. Do you guys have any tips on, when to find the time, how to separate the time out for people to practice the things you guys were just talking about?
I just feel like, you have to put an importance on things that are important to you, right? And I feel like a lot of times people are like, oh, Kristen, I was good to call you and I should have called you, but I think the main thing is, my whole, just tell your story. It doesn't have to be keep everything, just take the time to do a little homework. And when I do a 1 hour free consultation. And so I go in a house and see what they have and give them some tips and tricks on how to prepare and save some money, but I may have somebody that says, here, just take all of it and just, you do it. I do that too, but I'm cost conscious, I'm a mom and a grandma now. And it's like, we need the money for other things too. And, just sometimes I think just a guide or somebody helping someone else to give them some advice like we do. I just think that that's really helpful. And that's why the Save Your Photos Month, it's free. It's great information. Yeah. People can really learn a lot of things from us, and, and continue to follow the things that the photo managers promote and what we do.
One thing I like to say too, Fred, is, okay.
I think that's a really good point, Kristen, that's the whole purpose of all those free sessions. They're geared towards individuals working on their own. This is what we do for the people the do-it-yourself people who want or need to do it themselves. And we've had a lot of conversations before, is that most professional photo managers are using scanners like Kristen showed pictures of, or camera scanning. We use a lot. I'm guessing Kristen has more than that one scanner in the picture. I've got a whole bunch. The equipment is expensive, but if all you can afford, so if you can afford a professional, that to me is the best way to get it done. And even if all you get is some advice on how to get started from your professional in a consultation, and then you get to work on your own. I've done that with a lot of people, or take advantage of all the do-it-yourself stuff. Or if all you can do is scan it with an app on your phone, then how would I say this? I'll use the old one. Done is better than perfect. Yeah. Like, photo managers, we try to be perfect, but if what you can do right now, and start with start with a, like, do it. I'm now encouraging people, because I know as a photo manager, how overwhelming and challenging it can be when you get a whole house load of photos, or you've got like 15 boxes of stuff and all sorts of stuff everywhere. Is pick a project, start with something, say, okay, I want to do grandma's pictures and get those done, or I want to do my childhood, and start with little bits and bits, and then spend a little bit of time every day, and then you'll get her done.
And get family members to help. A lot of times, people are like, oh, should I throw these away? I'm like, no, mail those to whoever's in the photo. If you don't want those, maybe somebody else does, or, but gathering people together too. It's another reason to get together with your family, tell the stories, write it on the back of the pictures. I mean, it's just a great event to do with your family members.
And if you wrap it around the story, people are more interested and it's more interesting for you if you are working on stories behind the photos than just looking at it as a mechanical process when you're trying to do your own.
Yeah. And I think of the people that lost all their photos, but they still have those stories, right? So sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, all my photos burned, but I have this great story from this location. You can Google a picture of that area and you could still share a little story, right? Even though you don't have the picture, create your own written picture for somebody. Because I just hate that when somebody feels like they can't find something, or something's so damaged. It just, it breaks your heart, but there's still a story behind, a lot of things too.
I have to interject one more thing that I forgot to mention. I know Kristen didn't mention either, is there was something going around in preparing for hurricanes a couple of years ago, and it's probably going to resurface now. Please don't put your photos in your dishwasher.
Yes.
And you're important. That's not good advice. That's really, really, really bad advice.
Yeah.
And because when dishwashers are ripped out of the flooding in High River turned railway tracks into corkscrews. You better believe it's going to be able to get the door off your dishwasher. And dishwashers are inherently wet to begin with. So
and have
why
drains
that
and have places where water
hooked up to pipes and everything. I don't know who got that idea. They're watertight. Yeah. Well, yeah, except for the big pipe that pours water in those. Please don't do that. Don't put them anywhere.
We laughed about that. We said we were going to put that on the slide. We should have did that with a line through it. We forgot.
Yes. Because I'm pretty sure it's going to show
up. Yes, no dishwasher.
No dishwasher.
Oh, Kathy, you were going to say something a second
ago. I was just thinking, one thing I like to tell people is that it took a lifetime to create the photo collection you have. It's not going to take a lifetime to scan them, but a lot of times people think it's like a weekend job or something. And it's really, I think for people to understand, this is a 6 month, a year project sometimes. Maybe like Kathy was saying, pick maybe, the month of September, you're just going to scan or go through the back to school photos. That's it, that you've collected over the years. In October, maybe you're going to go through the fall and, Halloween photos, and then just try and think of it that way, because then you'll be less frustrated. I think a lot of people quit with a sense of failure, like I'm failing at this, but you're not failing. It just, and you're still taking photos. We all are, right? So it's not like, so anyway, that's just some kind of encouragement to give people to not quit too quickly, because it's worth it. It's worth the effort to get it done, but it definitely is going to take some time.
All right. So what I pulled from that was set smaller goals so that you're accomplishing them in piece by piece. Make an event out of it. Like you said, make it a family event, so it's not something that you're attacking alone. And I think you like you said, you don't have to keep every photo. Especially if you have multiple copies of a photo, if you have family around, you have a way to distribute the multiple copies so that everyone has a piece of the story, a physical piece of the story. And then Kathy, you actually hit on one of my favorite sayings. Don't let perfect get in the way of good enough, right? So if you're trying to do a job and you want to get it perfect, if you're paying someone to get it perfect, yes, it should be perfect at that point. But if you're trying to attack it yourself, as long as you've preserved the memories and you're prepared for whatever emergency might come, then you at least have that much behind it.
Cool. Absolutely. Yeah.
Grateful for what you have.
And you can throw, I mean, we do a whole thing about the ABCs of photo, but you can throw photos in the can, kind of, that's our C, but, and we recommend like the 80-20 rule. You should really, only about 20% of your photos tell the stories that you really want to. It's okay to, whether you want to throw them away or some people can't tolerate that, then just put them back in a box. And I always joke and say, put on the top of the box, if I pass away and you inherit these photos, I couldn't do it, but you're welcome to throw them away. Because a lot of times people inherit photos after photos after photos because they feel really guilty. So you can relieve the guilt. But as long as you took those 20% that tell the story, those A photos, we call them, or the photos that are album worthy, archival worthy, that's the process of what you're trying to accomplish here. It's really, we're becoming curators of our own life stories.
Yeah.
You know, my grandparents had only 5 or 10 photos, right? And then each generation, it just keeps expanding, and to the point where now they've almost become meaningless. We have so many, but they're not meaningless. There's those key photos that really still matter. And that's what we're trying to help people understand. And videos. And like we say, we say photos, but I think videos, I think that's becoming, we're all shooting more videos, and then memorabilia, letters, handwritten notes, recipes, all of those are things that we mean when we talk about these things that are kind of priceless, that you just would be devastated to lose.
And I think a lot of people feel like, well, either I have no one to pass my story on to, or we weren't really anybody. We don't really have a story that anyone is interested in. And I'm the granddaughter of British immigrants who were farmers in Canada, but the Military Museum is very interested here in having all my grandfather's medals and stuff. So once that's digitized, and it ensures that someone down the road doesn't end up with it going like right now, I was given it to it. It was in possession of one of my cousins who passed, and it was passed on to me because right now everybody knows Kathy won't throw it away. But once it's photographed in digital, then everybody can share it, and we can put the stories with it. We can put all the stories, and you can combine with that photo of the medals. You can combine with that his army papers for the two. He fought for the British Army in World War I, the Canadian in World War II. You can put all that together, and then it is history. It is history, part of history, and it's things that people don't understand, that people don't even know about. And so that perspective that there are places, if you're trying to get rid of the physical, get it photographed, get the story told of what it is. Like even my kids, I've been doing some storytelling sessions with artifacts that we have. And a couple of my kids have said to me, and my kids are grown men in their almost very late 20s. And they've said, I had no idea what that was. He said, I knew it was really cool, but I had no idea the story behind it. And then now it's even cooler now because we know the stories. And I think what you mentioned too, Kathy, about and when you were in your 20s, you didn't want, your mom tried to give you all of the photos, is she tried to give you a whole ton of boxes of essentially a mess. And now with people in much smaller places, nobody wants the mess. But if you offer a curated family legacy, there's a heck of a lot more interest in it, even among young people. So.
All right. We are getting to the hour. I was wondering, is there anything you guys wanted to leave people watching at home with?
I just want people not to feel overwhelmed. Like we talked a lot about, there's so much stuff, and just don't feel overwhelmed, but just, do it one step at a time, and a little bit here, a little bit there. But, I always tell people too, what photo book would you want first? What story needs to be told first? Kathy kind of mentioned that a little bit, so it's just, pick something. And once you do something you're excited about, then it really makes you feel like you can continue to do something else, and don't make it feel like it's such a burden, because it's not. You just want to be able to, tell your story like we were saying. And I just think that's a lot of it. And what's the crazy amount of digital pictures, Kathy Nelson, that people say we take on a daily basis?
I think it's a
don't even get started about phones. We didn't even talk about that, but it's you got to purge some of that stuff too. You don't need all that, too much data.
Cool. All right. Well, Kathy, Kristen, thanks so much for being a part of today. To all our viewers, remember, there's more coming to you from the photo managers and the B&H virtual event space these coming Tuesdays in September. In addition to what they're offering at the photomanagers.com, remember to go to photomanagers.com/Save Your Photos Month. The link is in the chat. No matter what channel you're watching on. If you were wondering about that one Tuesday at the beginning of the month, well, B&H is hosting its Build Expo, a live event celebrating B&H's 50th anniversary. It'll be a couple of blocks away from our Superstore at the Javits Center in New York City on September 6th and 7th. You can get more info for that at buildexpo.com. Again, link in the chat. All right, we hope to see you there. We hope you catch up with us and the photo managers again here. We hope you've enjoyed. And that said, guys, one more thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
See you again soon. Take
See you
care,
again soon.
everybody. Stay safe.
This has been another edition of the B&H Virtual Event Space. Until next time, catch you later.